How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Terry Dawson. I'm 23 years old and I'm representing Cartronics in Nashville, Tennessee. We have 4 stores conveniently located all around Nashville. Come check us out. So for my main vehicle entry this year, I decided to go with a 2003 GMC Yukon XL. I chose this car for a lot of different reasons, but mainly because there's a massive gun in the back. That was the main design that the customer wanted. All he cared about was having his Barrett 50 cal in the back, and he left the rest pretty much up to me. So what I decided to do is we went with 2 lithium banks, 3 Titanate lithium batteries, 2 DD Z4 15 subs, 2 M5A 8Ks for the subs. We did 3 4-channel amps, 2 8s in the front doors, 2 6.5s in the front doors, 6.5s in the rear doors, sound dampening top to bottom, trunk layout, of course, with the gun. The clean wiring for this build, obviously there's a lot of amps, so there's a lot of wires, especially with 2 8K amps. I mean 3 aught gauge power inputs and ground inputs per amp, as well as 3 4-channel amps. On the materials used for this car, the customer did have a lot of input as he's an off-road rugged guy. He wanted a more durable off-road look. So with a build this big, there's always going to be troubleshooting problems along the way. It's kind of like that with every build, but it's just about how you get past them quickly. So my biggest troubleshooting problem with this car was just actually trying to house the amount of equipment that we were looking to put in the car with the space that we had provided. The subs need 4 cubes. We have 2 massive amps, 3 small amps, 3 batteries back there, as well as a Barrett 50 cal, 5 bullets, and a whole show trunk. So trying to just plan is the most important part for me during this build, was trying to plan out how I'm going to house the amps, being able to stack them, being able to get the batteries in a center console shape to where they can flow and not be in the way and still do their job efficiently. Fabrication on this job, like most big jobs, was obviously a pretty big part of it. Just from building the square box and making all the trim around it, building the floor, figuring out how we're gonna securely mount a 50 caliber gun, all the bullets, cutting in acrylic windows. I mean, there's fabrication all over this build. So tools I had to use to get this job done was our table saw, our panel saw, routers with chamfer bits and round over bits. I used Fornister bits to recess magnets in on this build. I also used our in-house laser to cut all the acrylic windows out, as well as different mounts for the bullets, as well as the terminal cup on the back of the box and all the acrylic under that we lit up throughout the project. So there was a lot of different tools used for this job. When the customer first got his truck, he brought it to us. It was almost there. It had a lift, it had wheels and tires, but it was just really missing the wow factor that he was looking for. When he came to pick this truck up, he was over the moon happy, jumping up and down, screaming. Actually, tears came out of his eyes at one point. It just really was able to bring an older man back to when he was a kid again, and he was riding around in his Yukon in high school, bumping his 15s. Now he just has that top tier up. As well as fabricating the trunk, we also decided that we were going to flush mount a Stinger Hi-10 radio in his dash. It was basically taking a female housing that holds the Stinger Hi-10 radio and completely cutting out and molding it into the dash bezel. And then we shipped that off to get hydro dipped carbon fiber to match the trunk and to match his personal style. So for my system design this year, I decided to go with a 1996 Nissan hardbody that we built for the shop this year. This is one of the biggest system design projects I've ever had to do, just with the amount of actual woofers and drivers in the vehicle, trying to manage how everything is going to work together. It's kind of a big task. So what I had to do for this project is I had to design how we were going to be able to not cut the cab of the truck, but still fit 8 JL12s in the truck. So what we ended up coming up with is we're going to do a 4th order bandpass box ported through the rear glass, no cutting of the truck required. We put a topper on the truck, sealed it off, put all the amps behind the box in the bed, so you flip down the tailgate and you get to see all your amps in the floor, put a TV on the back, inverter for the TV, has a Sony radio, We built the door panels to house 2 JL 6.5s per panel, as well as added power locks and windows in the truck. We also came up with some acrylic designs for the door handles as well as door inserts. Also, where the factory doubled-in was, we now have an acrylic block-off plate that houses battery voltage, base knob, power window switches, and some designs that the owner of the truck liked. So for the electrical on this build, we decided to go with 2 Titan 8 batteries in the back, as well as a standard battery and a super cap under the hood. With this build, I learned that managing space is absolutely key with amplifier mounting and proper wire routing, as well as for cooling for the amplifiers. So what this system design has taught me is that it doesn't matter the amount of equipment or the amount of space that you're taking up, as long as you have a proper plan in the beginning, that it will likely work out in the end. It may need to tweak and you may need to make small changes from your original plan, but having that baseline plan on paper or on the computer helps with the total outcome of the vehicle. So clean wire for me is a day-to-day job. It's not a one-off build or something like fabrication where I'm not doing it every day. Clean wire is a part of every job, every day where I'm at. A lot of shops have, a lot of higher end one-off builds and that's pretty much it, but where I'm at, it's a lot of day in and day out, amps, deck and fours, remote starts, radios, backup sensors, all this stuff that needs clean wire management day to day. So I have all the proper connectors, ferrules, and heat shrink and solder. I have all the things on hand that make it possible to make clean wire a lot easier. So clean wire for me is a day-to-day job, and that's all there is to it. Wiring cars cleanly is arguably one of the most important parts of our job. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of times, have a lot of problems because wiring isn't up to spec. So here it's taught that there is no cutting corners with clean wiring. Every car has to be clean wired. That's all there is to it. Wiring to me is what makes a good job go great or a mediocre job go good. Wiring to me can really excel you or really knock you down. So bringing clean wiring to the table 10 times out of 10 is very high on my priority list. So troubleshooting on this list I feel like is either the most loved or most hated part. For me, I really enjoy troubleshooting. I like figuring out problems that other people can't figure out or they've tried to figure out and bring to me, whether it's the customer or we've actually had other shops, dealerships, whatever. A lot of people bring cars here to get figured out. So troubleshooting is definitely huge. 2 projects that come to head. The first project is we had a customer that bought a trolley from auction and was having big problems trying to figure out the electrical to get audio to his trolley riders. He basically bought a super old trolley off of an auction and then was trying to transform it into a mobile brew hop service, but he didn't have a PA, he didn't have any audio, and he didn't have any solutions. He brought it other places, people turned him away and kind of said F you, but I took the time to really dive in and figure out what was going on. With the trolley, the main problem people were having was that it was a whole common ground system in the trolley, and trying to add amplifiers and a radio and speakers to actually play on a common ground system is a thing of the past, in the 40s and 50s, way old. So basically what I did was, once I figured out that it was a common ground issue, I completely gutted and ran new wires to all the speakers in the roof, as well as added an amplifier and cut in a double-din radio so he could have modern accessories like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for himself. The trolley for me was one of those things that you kind of want to hit yourself in the head on. I know I kind of summed it up quick here, but this was a few days of my life spent pulling my hair out, trying to figure out how these wooden panels come out and stuff that isn't built. You don't have a schematic for. It's not like I can hop on ProDemand or DirectX and whip up a trolley information wiring diagram. So trying to just start from this doesn't work and let's make it work, to diving in and figuring out problems and then figuring out how we're gonna have solutions to these problems was definitely straining, but worth the reward to see the customer smile at the end, that he can actually see his vision moving forward to the next step. The second troubleshooting project I have for this year is a wee bit bigger than the trolley, a wee bit more hands-on. Let's go take a look at it. So my major troubleshooting mission for the year is, yep, you guessed it, the Sinister 6 Alpine built in the early 2000s. This thing we've had as a company for about 2 years. It's been at another store, but the problem is that none of it works. It's an old car that a lot of people walked around, mashed in speakers on. I mean, it's a beautiful car, but it's definitely outdated and time for a refresh. The audio didn't work when it got here. The car wouldn't even turn on. I mean, nothing. So I've dove in some on this car. We obviously got the top moved. The batteries are back at resting voltage. The audio makes noise now. So my main goal for this project is to take and incorporate the new Alpine F1 status into the old Alpine F1 status car. I mean, why wouldn't we? It just makes sense. So this car for me is obviously a big troubleshooting task because there's none of them. There's one, it's here. That's it. 2 people built it, one of one, and now we have to dive in and figure out what they did and reverse engineer a lot of it. This car is so unique and so one of one that it's definitely going to be a huge troubleshooting task, but I'm happy it's here for me to take a look. So let's talk fab. I mean, fab is huge. Fab is arguably why most people got into this industry. Either they saw someone build something really cool, they went to a car show and want to know how something's done, or they just are handy and want to build cool stuff. I mean, that's pretty much why everyone got into this industry. This year, I chose the car behind me. It is a 2020 Dodge Charger Hellcat that we basically took and overhauled. I paneled off this whole trunk using modern techniques such as holding everything in with magnets. That way the customer can easily access behind the panels, as well as we can easily remove the panels to get the rest of the trunk out or to access audio equipment. So the steps that I took to fabricate this trunk obviously first started on paper. I drew out a plan, designed how I was going to do it, designed basically what I wanted to do, and then hopped in the wood shop and started making it happen. This whole trunk, apart from the actual box, is all made out of expanded PVC, 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch PVC as well, wrapped to match the factory red and black suede throughout the car. Also, this car has not only a fiber optic headliner as well as a fiber optic trunk liner, which is something I've never seen, and I'm sure maybe it has been done, I've just never seen it. I wanted to tackle this, and this actually was a bigger fabrication hurdle than I thought it was going to be. So my basic idea was that I was going to cut the fiber optic strands in half and then make a new mount to attach the strands to the controller. That way I could do half in the headliner and half in the trunk liner. So this basically consisted of me mimicking the factory mount and then designing and cutting one from our laser. So obviously when you're building something in layers, you have to figure out how the layers are going to attach to each other and how the whole thing is going to come together as one piece in the end. I was able to do this a couple different ways, but the way that I chose to do, I think, is the most beneficial for longevity of the build and for the customer. Instead of using screws or dowel rods to attach everything, I actually used a Forster bit and flush mounted magnets into every panel in this trunk. That way the customer could pull off each panel and still access behind it for storage, as well as remove everything in case the trunk ever needed to come apart again. It can come apart and go together 1,000 times exactly like it looks right now. So for this car, I had to really step outside my comfort zone to give the customer exactly what he was looking for. I spent a lot of time in VCarve on the computer drawing up a lot of these one-off designs with his initials or the acrylic tweeter mounts. I mean, everything that's acrylic in this car was cut here. Professionally this year, I've taken a lot of time to better myself on the computer in VCarve, cutting and designing, as well as more hands-on with fiberglass and Bondo to up my skills to give the client better work. Personally this year, I've had a lot of good ups. I bought my first house with my beautiful fiance, and tackling home renovations head on with that has been fun. So this year I renewed my MECP Basic certification. I also got my MECP Advanced certification. Also, I renewed my IntoxLock certification to install breathalyzers for the state of Tennessee. As far as events goes, the major event I got to go to in the past year was, of course, MasterTech 2022 in Arizona. Getting my MECP Master certification is top of my priority list for next year, as well as attending MasterTech 2023 to grow and learn more than I did this past year. My role in the store is to be the tech that no matter the job, it gets done correctly and in a timely manner. In doing this day in and day out, I provide great value in the company, knowing that they can take in a tight deadline job or something out of the ordinary and trust that what they sold the customer is going to get delivered. I impact everyone at my store and most everyone at our other stores by just being a fun guy who keeps his chin up during tough times, and that's what people need at work. My ability to move past problems, to fabricate, to be hands-on, to not be scared, to get after it, are all good reasons that qualify me to be the installer of the year. I'm here to prove that you don't have to be 40 years old with 20 years experience to be a good technician or to get far in this industry. All you have to be is willing to learn, ready to get your hands dirty, and ready to get after it. And I represent Cartronics in Madison, Tennessee.